Forests, both light and heavy, are some of the most common types of terrain in Battletech, and making these in a 3D style can be a little difficult. Thankfully, I've got a process here which will let us do a modular type of uh, tile for forests, which makes this pretty simple and still playable when playing Battletech. Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel with Hexed Crafting, and today we're going to go through the process of creating these tiles. We're going to start off with a list of the different supplies that I've used, and then we'll go into the actual construction. So, let's get started. So, what you see here is most of the supplies we're going to be using. So, we've got our tiles, which are going to be the standard tiles we've been setting up. The big thing first is going to be these. These are fuzzy bump Chanel, if I am remembering this correctly, pipe cleaners, often used in crafts. You see, you've got a tight section, then you've got a section that is all sort of puffed out like that. And that's going to be what the majority of our tree is going to be based off of, with a little interesting technique here. We'll set that aside here. We've got ourselves on top of that some magnets. Now, these are magnets from K&J Magnetics. These are neodymium rare earth magnets. And I think these are N42 discs. I generally get these a few hundred at a time because I use them in a whole bunch of stuff with my different modeling, like putting on the bases of my miniatures. The only place I'd ever recommend to get magnets is from K&J. This is another big one here. This is hexagonal flexible steel base bottoms, and this is from Litko.net. I'm using 40 millimeter because this is specifically smaller, intentionally smaller than the hexes we're going to use. You can probably get by with a wash or something similar, but these are very good for their use case here. I would highly recommend, if you're going to go through this process that I'm using, to do this or get something similar. Next, you want a good pair of scissors or shears, and then you're going to want to grab your Mod Podge. Uh, and I also am going to be using some super glue and some accelerant. I went ahead and taken the accelerant, the little spritz bottles, and taken it out of there and poured it into that little container there. I also am going to be using something steel. In this case, I'm going to be using a steel ruler for its convenience. Anything that is steel should do the job. All right, now we're going to go ahead and get started by cutting the trees. I am wearing gloves because the next part's going to get really, really messy. What we are basically going to be doing here, let's go ahead and focus in. We're going to be slicing these off in the middle of each section. So in the middle there and in the middle there. And you're going to take these chiffon, these bump chiffon pipe cleaners, fuzzy bump, and you're just going to go through and do this for the entire length. Now, when you do that, the way we did this here, you will get the thicker sections are basically going to be the trunks of the trees, and the fluffier sections are going to become the branches. You can see I've went ahead previously and cut a whole bunch of this stuff up. A bag of this stuff will last you for lots of trees. Now, like I said, this is going to be messy, and I'm also going to grab a stick, a piece of scrap XPS foam. We should have a bunch by this point. And here's the way this works. So take your glue and stick some glue on the pipe cleaner. Then you're going to rub it into that so that all of the different fibers get soaked in. You can see there how it's all sort of sticking together. And then you're going to move the fibers back down after this, and in the process, you'll see that the fibers stick together, and what is not perfect, but you can say looks kind of like a tree. Now, once you have all of these set, kind of want to twirl around that to try and compress the base a little bit. You're going to get green stuff everywhere. Then you want to push it into the foam. This is just going to be a holding spot. 2 or 3 wide is typically what I go with these here. And then you're just going to continuously repeat the process. Grab the glue, stick some on the craft stick here, the the pipe cleaner, get it all wound into the fibers so they're all starting to stick together. Once you've done that, go the opposite direction of the grain to sort of fluff out the fibers into what looks kind of like tree limbs, and then push it into there. Once you've done a lot of these, or however many you feel like doing, you're going to leave this to dry. This shouldn't take too long, but leave it to dry thoroughly. Now, while you're waiting for that to dry, the next step is to take our metal, our steel hexes, and we're going to apply these to our tiles here. And you can use whatever adhesive you want. I will say I'm going to be using hot glue, and in the process of doing this, hot glue does have a lot more volume, so it's going to be a little more bumpier, but it's also going to be a lot quicker. That's pretty much all there is to it for this part here. But all you really do is you're going to be taking this, you're going to be peeling off the adhesive, applying glue, and then sticking it on the hex. Like I mentioned before, these are smaller intentionally than the hexes we're going to be sticking this on. This is due to the fact that in the process of doing all the flocking, you're going to see a slight indentation on the hex, which is going to be an indicative pattern that this is a forest hex. It helps to make it stand out from everything else. All right, let's go ahead and get the hot glue gun, and let's go ahead and do a few of these up. So like I said, they have a self-adhesive side, but I personally don't trust that, so I'm just going to be applying some hot glue on one side. You can see there, just sort of sticking it on, and then we're just going to kind of jam this on to the hex. Doesn't even need to be even as long as it is within the hex, and press down. That metal is going to actually help it cool pretty rapidly. If you're going to be using some other adhesive, you need to give this also sufficient time to dry. Something like a PVA or pretty much anything else. You could go through and stick with the adhesive that comes on this, but like I said, I personally don't trust it for that, which is why I'm adding additional adhesive to get this stuck down. And we're not butting these up, we're just making sure that each metal hex is completely inside of another hex. Do this to all of the hexes you plan on making, and again, if need be, set these to dry. You're going to apply the standard treatment to these that we do to other other grasslands tiles. So you're going to coat everything in your typical black paint and Mod Podge mixture. Then you're going to, once that dries, make sure you've got black on the edges, and then make sure that you take your flocking material and flock the entire thing. Apply your glue, flock the entire thing, let it dry, etc. Same process. So if you haven't seen it yet, go back and take a look at the video I did on making plains tiles or grassland tiles, however you want to call them. And this is going to be real simple for this part. By this point, you should have the glue on your trees dried, so let's jump back over to there. Okay, so you have a bunch of trees now that you've dried, and you can see these are quite stiffened. When the Mod Podge dries, for the most part, the fibers are going to be put in their places there. It will truthfully still be really flexible because they are pipe cleaners, but that's what it is. On the left here, we've got our metal ruler. Just to show you a few of these that I went ahead and did up in advance here to show you what we're looking like here. But we're going to take your steel bit. Again, I'm going to use a metal ruler, a steel ruler, because it is convenient. I'm putting some parchment paper over top of this. This will make it easier later to pull stuff off. And then what we're going to do is we are going to lay down a bunch of different magnets and then attach trees to them. So we're just going to pull off all of our different magnets. I try and keep them all in the same, ultimately in the same polarity, but I'm not too careful about it. It doesn't matter too much in the end. But I'd say 2 across is a pretty good number here. Just go ahead and fill out a whole bunch of these. Next, grab your super glue or your CA glue and your CA glue accelerant, whatever brand you decide to use here, and go ahead and start pulling some of the trees up. We're going to do one at a time here. Now, at the very base, you're going to want to go through and sort of crush the fibers down for the area that you're going to make your trunk. They won't stay permanently like that, but that's sort of what we're looking at. You're going to snip the end of it off so it's a little flatter. And this actually is going to set decently well on the magnets, since all of these pipe cleaners have metal steel wires. So we're going to add a drop of the accelerant to the magnet. We're going to apply a drop. So we can get in frame here. Autofocus. Yeah, we're going to apply a drop or dollop here of the super glue. Let's go ahead and fix that real quick. And we're simply going to stick it directly onto the magnet here. So you want a good amount of this on here, as you want all of this to harden. You can use tougher stuff. I've used like 2-ton epoxy in the past, but you stick it on there, give it a moment. The steel wire along with the super glue should help it adhere pretty quickly. And when it does, you're going to leave this to dry. Leave it to dry completely. You are going to find later that as you start pulling these up, some of them did not adhere properly. Just go back and redo the glue. For this entire batch, I had like 3 total that did not adhere correctly. So it's pretty decent for this. You don't need accelerant, but I like it because it does sort of speed everything up, and I'm definitely a little lazy in this regard here. But this process is really repetitive. Take the tree, spin the trunk, clip off the end, accelerant on top of the magnet, glue on top of the tree, a big drop of glue, stick it on to the magnet into the accelerant, hold it for a moment, and there you go. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of these, and then we're going to go to the next step, which is going to be painting. So we have the trees all dried here. Like I said, we're going to have a few of these that'll pull away from the magnet, but for the most part, you can pick them up and put them down. And this is almost a direct contact with steel. So you know that you've got a pretty decent connection if you can do that with neodymium magnets. We're going to be using basic browned paint for this here. And I'm just going to put a big dollop of this here in the center of this palette with a bit of paper to prevent it from causing a problem. You can see the tree. There is a metal wire in the center. And if you are concerned, you can paint the entire thing to go over that. At the distance we're looking at these, it's not a concern in my opinion, and I typically don't even bother. For painting these, I've got an old glass bottle with a metal top because I'm using magnets. It sticks to that real well, just to act as a painting handle. So let's go. This is just really murky water, really basic brown paint. So stick something with a magnet there. And yep, you can see where in this first one here, it came right off. We'll set that aside. I will redo that one later, and then we'll just grab another one, which doesn't have that problem. Just like so. All right, we're going to plop down a bunch of brown paint. This is cheap acrylic brown. It's all gummed up on the inside as well there, so it's no big deal. And we're just going to glop this all around the trunk area of the tree. This is going to look really good at 5 foot when you're looking at it from the top. It's not going to look whole tree-like when you're looking at it real down close, but we don't care. In the fact that we're doing scale modeling in this case, it's going to do the job admirably. Focus, Daniel. There we go. Nope, never mind. Filming on your phone, ladies and gentlemen. I'm even going to coat the bottom, the metal part here. That's not too big of a deal, but I just want to get the entire thing coated in brown. Once that is done, we're going to pull this off and just set it aside to dry. This only takes a little while for it to go through, and you can see now it's with the fibers making it look all rough. You could say that's an approximation of a tree. All of these are more of the evergreen style of trees. This is a simple way to do it. I'm certain we'll go through in the future and look at other tree types. I'm going to go ahead and get all of these painted, and we're going to go to the next step, which is basing the trees. So we have our trees that are all painted up here at this point. And the next step is we want to cover up the base of this, and we're going to make it sort of stick in with the rest of the terrain. So that means I'm going to be using the same green flocking material that I have for all of the other bases, all the other tiles that I've made. Now, for sticking down the flock, I'm going to go ahead and go to my wood glue. In this case, I'm using Titebond 3. And I'm just going to apply a big dollop of this here in the center, just like so. We are going to be doing, well, let's show you this. So we take it, show you what it looks like. We're going to swirl it around in the base of it. We're going to swirl it around here in the glue, just like so. We're going to sort of wipe off the bottom of it a little bit, and then we're going to swirl it around in the flocking material. Make sure we shake off any excess, and that's pretty much it. So you can see there. Let's go ahead and do a few more here. This is going to apply a mound of forest-looking material at the base. It's going to help reinforce the glue joint with the magnet, although don't be surprised in the future if these still end up falling away, and it's going to help it blend in with the rest of the terrain. If you're going to be using a different flocking, I'd say use a different flocking for this. It may not be something that stands out too much, but it is a really quick process. Once all of this is done, the next step is going to be either, well, once it dries, it may be sufficient, or you might want to go back and again hit it with some more adhesive to help seal everything down like we do on the top with our scenic glue. Depending on what adhesive you use for this section here, it may not be necessary. If you went through and used something like epoxy glue, that would probably not have any issues sticking without a problem. So it is something to be aware of here. Now let's go and take a look at the final product. These are some trees that I've made previously, and you can see I've done a few different things here. I went ahead and used a dark wash on some of these and painted the leaves on others a little bit darker green. For the most part, though, for most of these, I stuck to the normal process of brown trunk and base the model. That's pretty much all there is to it for the most part. And with the Mod Podge, you get a good hard surface. You can either just clump these up, or I've actually a long time ago found some pencil tins that were made of steel, which actually stick to stuff really well. So if we grab a tile, what I typically do for these is, if you're going to represent a forest that has a heavy forest, say you put like 6 or 7 of these trees on the forest. Let's go and move this out of the way a little bit here. And with the steel underlay, you can see that little outline there of helping you layer that. So in this case, I've got a whole bunch of them on there, and you can say, hey, this is pretty heavily forested. We're going to call this a heavy forest tile. On the other hand, let's say you want a light forest tile, just put a few of them on there. You can see it's pretty sparsely populated by trees. And since these are all magnetized, when you move a mech through there, you can either pull them off completely or just push them to the side to fit the mech. The additional space in the hex is actually helpful in this regard for putting the minis in place. You do have to be careful with it sticking to other trees because of the magnets, but that's pretty much it. And these do stick decently well. They're easy to pull off, so you don't have to worry about it sticking real heavily, but they will definitely stick even if you turn them upside down or shuffle the table. So I think these are an excellent solution. So with this, the next video, we're going to go ahead and look at something a little bit different. If you have any questions about this process, please ask them in the comment section below. I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. And I hope to have you with me on the next video. So as always, thank you for watching.